Thanks for tuning in to Breaking Strings. We've got a returning guest, Armenian guitar virtuoso Gohar Vardanyan. You can find her at goharvardanyan.com or Gohar Guitar on Instagram. Thanks for coming back on. I'm glad I convinced you to do a second one. It's going to be really fun.
It didn't take much convincing, did it? I'm very happy to be back. Thank you for having me again.
Let me jump into a couple of things. I want to mention our maestro because Maestro Manuel Barrueco, I got to see his concert last Monday night, so just a couple of days ago. I want to talk about how his sound has changed and how interesting it was to see this like new programming that he had. It was really unusual. And in the last episode, I was talking about how a player, as they mature, every 5 years, maybe even less than that, the taste in the repertoire needs to change. The taste in the tone color needs to change. And I saw this with Manuel. He was playing pieces that I could never imagine him playing. Literally, he played Dionisio Guado. He played the Fandango by Dionisio Guado. And I remember him saying that he wasn't a huge fan in particular of this composer. I know he played one of his pieces, and that was the Fernando Sor Grand Solo transcribed by a Guado.
Yes.
What's your take on the last time that you saw him and your thoughts on changing? I think this is the most interesting part of this human experience of live play,
The last time I saw him play live, I wouldn't say he had completely gone to a different repertoire selection, because it's been years. It was before COVID. He played at the New York's Historical Society, and he still played some. He played some De Falla. He played some Spanish music, some Albeniz. So it was still what you're used to hearing from him. I couldn't say much had changed like you described, because you're right. I've never heard him play aguado before, and in the guitar, it must have been still the diamond that I was used to. So I didn't really hear much difference. But also, when the second question, it does make sense. Like, he has had such a long career, right? He's been playing for 60 years or so. At some point, you're going to have to explore other things as well. You might be known for certain repertoire during your younger years, younger career, and that's how people know you. And then something surprising happens when you are in your 60s, in your 70s. Your taste maybe changes. I feel like in a different for different people, I guess. When you're younger, like for me as well, I liked playing like really fast, flashy pieces that would show off my technique, and I still like doing it, but I feel like now I will gravitate towards things that are darker, more lyrical, and maybe also flashy, but not all about how fast something is. And I'm only 38, so who knows in another 20 years what kind of repertoire I might want to learn, and what I would like to showcase in my abilities or the repertoire that I chose to play. So I guess, people change when they grow, and he decided to dive into repertoire that he maybe didn't like before or didn't connect with as much, and now he does.
It's true. Now that you mention it, when I first met you, it was the summer before we started studying together, so that would be 2004.
2004, yeah.
And I did know, I knew you for playing the harder showpieces, and I knew you for playing things that were really, really challenging. It's a pleasure to kind of tune into your Instagram. I literally tuned into your Instagram right before we started here, and the clip that you decided to post was the beautiful melodic section of this Baltasar Benitez Piazzolla transcription. Is one of my favorites to play. It's just so much fun to play that. And that melodic section is just so, it's dark, it's so rich, and it's very difficult actually to play very, very convincingly, as far as making it very connected and lyrical on the guitar. And you're doing such a nice job with that. I also found the same thing, is that as a person that started it a little bit later, I always felt like I had to pick for a while the pieces that were sort of in this particular grade in terms of being challenging, and I didn't really want to play slow pieces. But after a certain period, I personally, the pieces that I enjoy to play, just when everything is quiet and in the house, I do love a lot of very, very slow and melodic pieces. I love it, and also especially with the Baroque, for example, it's like Baroque suites. Some of the slow movements in there are very, very, very challenging to connect on the guitar, and I find that challenging.
Yeah, playing slow music it's way more difficult if you already have the ability to play fast because it sounds odd, but to play fast, if you can play fast, if your fingers move fast, you've been playing since you were a little child and you have the technique to play fast, it's much easier to play fast. You Because imperfections don't last very long, like you replace them with a bunch of other notes. So if you hit something a little bit unclean or whatever, it's moved on. Another 20 notes have been played in the next moment. When you're playing something slow, it has to be so connected, it has to be so lyrical. If you mess it up, you're going to be sitting in your mess for a while because the next note comes a long
Right.
while afterwards. There's more time for the audience to pick up all the nuance, which means you have to do all of the nuance. Versus in a faster pace, you have to make the shapes happen with the phrasing. Of course, you can't just play like metronome, boring and quick. But it's different. It's more flashy. Like there's no time to really absorb what you heard. So I find slow pieces to be more difficult to play, to really make them sing way more, especially on a guitar since we play a note and it just dies away. We can't really connect, like the legato is more difficult.
I have a challenging question. How do you personally balance this aspect of having a career in music? We have these things that we enjoy doing. These are the things that we enjoy the most. These are, for lack of a better term, these are our passion projects. And you have to balance them with some other work that you might need to do, which may be, not fit in quite into our passion project, but it's something that earns us an effective living. And the reason why I'm not specifying yet about anything is because this is different for each individual person, and this sort of percentage of which one we get to, that again, that is everybody's own life and circumstances and everything. It's going to be very different. But I wanted you to touch on it, and then I'll chime in kind of with my own thoughts about that.
That you're right. It will be very different for every single person versus being like what the passion project is and what they actually have to do to live. For since I'm the one answering the question, it will be a very personal answer. I am a very practical person. I am not one of those, emotional, like what you would assume like an artist is, right? A lot of times the stereotype for an artist is that they live for the art and all of that. I'm not that person. I love the art. I love music. When I'm playing it, I take it, to the most perfect level I can take it musically and all of that. But internally, I'm a practical, logical, pragmatic person. So for me, I don't have that problem having to, maybe do something that's not performing or working on the new repertoire, because that's not what immediately pays your bills, right? What pays your bills is maybe playing the concert and getting paid for it, but also for me, it's teaching. That's the practical part of living on this planet and being able to pay rent. What lucked out for me is that I actually like teaching. So it's not something that I have to do to pay the bills and to support my passion project. It's that I actually enjoy teaching, and it doesn't matter what level I teach. I have adults, beginners, and I have children who are, one of my students is going to Peabody and be like us, next year. So I have a wide range of students in age and ability. And I actually enjoy doing that. And somebody looking from the outside might think that like, oh, teaching is what you have to do and like playing is what you want to do. For me, it's both. I like the teaching part of it because I feel like it makes you grow as a musician as well and as a human and as a teacher, because when you teach so many different people, you interact with all these different people and everyone has a different learning style, everyone has a different communication style, and having to learn to like communicate with that person to make them understand how to play the guitar, it teaches you a lot. So I find that very interesting. So it's no longer like this two separate things for me. And maybe that is because I'm a practical person, I don't know, and I just happen to like teaching. And passion projects, like, it's simple for me. I like learning repertoire and practicing them and bringing them to the highest level that I can at the moment, and then perform it for people. Although, if I had a career of, let's say, only performing and, let's say, I don't know, traveling every single free time I have in a whole year, going from one place to another, I don't think I would be too happy that way. If I had to take out teaching and I had to play, let's say, 60 concerts a year, that would mean I would be on the road the entire year. And that, I don't think I would be happy being that nomad all the time. So even though I like performing and I like, that challenge of learning new repertoire and sharing it with people, I think I found a nice balance where I can still have a life, I can still have friends and do things and have a home and not like live at the airport. And sometimes, maybe hopefully more than sometimes, share with the audience. So for me, I found that balance. I don't know how.
It's the same for me. I started working. Teaching was my first job immediately when I was 18. I started even teaching, students that were in my high school or that we'd already graduated, but I'd former students in my high school and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whoever was interested, I immediately started teaching. And the reason I kind of brought up that question is because, like I said, since I was 18, I was always thinking about this. Sometimes I would get offered, I guess what it would be referred to as a gig, because it would be, you'd sometimes like play some excerpts of music, or you'd play certain, arrangements of things, and you would often play them sort of in a background setting. And I want to make sure that whoever is listening, they understand. I'm not knocking doing that whatsoever. I mean, especially if you enjoy it, and everybody's experience is different. I can only tell my own experience was that when I tried doing some of those things, I didn't enjoy it because I just didn't feel like I was being challenged. I didn't feel like I was learning anything. And I often would take work that if you match it up in terms of time, it would pay less. And I was just enjoying that work a lot more because and that kind of work was teaching, and it was working with students, and it would take perhaps longer to earn what I could make in that gig, but I felt challenged. Like I did. I felt there's a psychological element to working with different people. You're working with there's the methodology of just how people learn and how you adjust to everybody individually. And I love that challenge. And, I'd often get into like debates with people, and people would say, well, why would you do that if in 2 hours you can make this? Well, I was like, well, because this is making me better and I enjoy doing it. So I guess that was kind of my main question, was this importance of enjoyment of your work for you, and the importance of having something that is challenging you and making you better on a daily basis. I mean, teaching is hard. Frequently puts you out of your comfort zone because you are always dealing with different people. And I don't know if you're like me, like I think about my students a lot. I think about my students way after the lesson is over, and I think about them throughout the week. And I have college students that I work with. I remember wanting them to succeed so much, and really taking it. Really, I just definitely taking everything home with me as I was teaching these more lecture kind of based classes and things like that. I love doing things like that really they put you out of the comfort zone, and they make you better, if not directly better. I mean, it's not like I'm practicing my repertoire in those sessions. It's different, but there's things that happen in there that really make me better. And I would often turn down work that was kind of easy money or easy and quick money, because just my heart wasn't in it. I mean, I don't know if that makes sense. And I know that it's different for everybody.
I agree with you about when you brought the examples of gigs, because my other example, I was thinking of like, something completely outside of music. But I don't like playing gigs. Like what you say, gigs is in when you're playing, when you're background music at some kind of event or at a wedding. Personally, I don't like it. I like playing a concert where I'm the center of attention, Then I feel like it's something that I've worked my entire life for, right? To play in that setting where you're on stage and people are there listening. But I do not like playing when people are eating. I learned that after graduating from school, because you kind of have to do anything that would come your way. So I would play all of these gigs, and you're right, they pay very well. They pay better than teaching, and sometimes they, at least back then, they paid better than actually playing concerts, because when you're an unknown person, a concert won't pay you that much. But a gig for an event, in 2-3 hours, you could make a lot of money. But I didn't like that feeling that I'm there playing and people aren't paying attention to me. And it sounds selfish and it sounds so like narcissistic. But I'm a guitarist, I'm a musician. I'm sharing music, and if you're going to not listen to me when I'm playing and just have me in the background, like, I don't want to do it. And I know it sounds like kind of weird. So I prefer to take the slow way and teach more hours to earn the same amount, where I find that more rewarding, because when you are teaching, you are hopefully the student is learning something and they're enjoying it, so you're actually bringing something positive to that person's life as well by teaching them an instrument that they really want to learn. So in terms of like my feelings towards that kind of contrast between teaching the slow way and making really fast amount in a gig
The fast
situation.
bucks.
The what?
The fast bucks.
The
I guess that's
fast
how they
book.
used to
Yeah,
call it. Yeah.
I would much prefer to teach for 8 hours than to play a 3 hour or 2 hour gig where no one's literally really listening to you. And I've played some gigs where it was actually pleasant, and I've also played gigs where they treat you like you're part of the service. Like they would take you in from the service entrance and not the main entrance, where I feel weird doing that. So yeah, and it's a personality thing too. I know people who absolutely love the gigging world and the gigging part, and they're very good at it. So for them, that they wouldn't want to teach. And they're like, that's a drag. Why would you want to teach? It's annoying. Like people don't practice this and this, and they much rather go and play a gig and make their fast bucks, or even slow, whatever, and enjoy that. So I think you have to find what you like, and it doesn't make one better than the other. It's just you have to find what suits you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I always have to reiterate this. I'm not knocking anybody that
Exactly,
does
me
this or
too.
likes to do it. It's just kind of a discussion, and it has to come from these personal experiences. And I had many personal experiences with this kind of like gig work that you're talking about. And for me, it wasn't a good fit. So I just
Yeah.
decided that that wasn't really my thing, and that wasn't really going to work. And I completely agree with how we work on our instrument, where we're looking at every single detail, and we're working so hard on these things that they need quiet. I mean, the guitar is a really quiet instrument. I know that you can amplify
You can
it.
amplify, yeah. But sometimes those places would get so loud that I wouldn't even be able to hear myself, right? Like I would be amplified, but then the people would get louder, talking to each other, and I couldn't even hear what I was playing. So it's just a matter of preference. However, it is in a way easier to play those gigs because no one's really paying attention. Where a
That's it right
concert,
there.
yeah, it's much easier. Ask somebody else who gets nervous in front of an audience. They will hate playing concerts because you are completely put on the spot, and because everyone is silent and they're listening to you, you're under pressure to play well. Because earlier I mentioned it's like, yeah, I'm the center of attention, right? I kind of said it as a joke. You are there to share the music that you are playing. And I felt like in a gig situation, all of that hard work that I had done to like work on the nuance and the phrasing to make the piece sound as good as I can imagine it, it's being underappreciated because I'm using an amplifier that ruins the sound, let's say, and people are talking over it. In a concert situation, it gives you that chance to share the music the way you feel it, and hopefully doing a good job, people listening to it. But it does put the pressure on. You can't, if you're super nervous, you might not be able to translate or transfer what you practiced to an audience. So it's harder.
I think that I learned so much more from smaller house concerts where it's very, very intimate. Perhaps could be as little as 20 people or something like that. And you're not on a stage; you're literally in someone's house. So it's like a salon concert. I've learned more doing those over the years than anything with the background work,
Yeah.
because in both cases, it's not a kind of a standard, formal classical performance. But, when I play for people and just maybe a small handful of people, it's like I can see the expressions on people's faces. I mean, the room is silent. I mean, really, if I'm testing out repertoire or I'm testing the response to certain repertoire, I can really see it on people's faces. And yeah, and in the kind of background work that I did when I was a student, I didn't really know. I mean, there's always exceptions and things like that, but that was my experience anyway.
And I found what you mentioned, I find it more difficult to play for a small audience than for a large
Hmm.
audience. And it could be an energy thing or whatever. If I walk on stage and let's say, I mean, you never really play for 1,000 people because it's classical guitar, but let's say, you walk out and there are a few hundred people in the audience. I find that easier because it kind of feels like there's a little bit more chaos out there on the other side of the stage because there's so many people and you don't really see them as individuals. You see this like big group, like the audience. You don't see their faces individually. It's just too far away. It's a bigger hall versus in a small intimate setting in someone's house or even just a small concert venue. You do see how they're reacting. It becomes more personal. You feel like they are just watching every single or listening to every single little thing that you do. So I find that more nerve-wracking than playing in a big space with lots of people. Would seem the opposite because if you mess up, more people will see that you messed up, but it feels a bit more balanced. Like if there's chaotic over there, if it calms you down more.
I have to touch on your young starting age with the guitar one more time. I touched on it in the last podcast a little bit, but I have to touch on it again because, as I told you in private before we did the podcast, that my son, who's 5 years old, has
Uh-huh.
now started taking guitar lessons with me several times a
Mm-hmm.
week. Maybe maybe I'm being selfish, but I would like to hear some of your secrets. And
My
this,
secret.
well, no, the secret is whatever your father did. There were so many things that worked with you in his approach. Could we just touch briefly on methodology from that young age of like 5, 6, 7, where yeah you're very, very, very young, and you know you're still learning how to read, and let alone and now you're already being worked up to reading sheet music and everything like that.
Well, actually, so the sheet music reading came much later. So,
Okay.
of course, I don't remember a lot of this. I don't remember a time not playing guitar and I'm playing guitar. So this is what I've been told afterwards from my dad. So I probably the guitar was put in my hands when I was 4 or 5. And from what he has explained to me is that the first thing he did, he concentrated on technique. So I did not read music. It was completely taught to me hand to hand. He would show me something, or he would just put my fingers where they needed to go. And the very beginning stages, it was right hand alone. I wasn't doing anything with my left hand because it's almost more important to have a good right hand technique than left. Because left, you can fix it over time. It's a bit usually what makes or breaks a guitarist is their right hand. How free it is, how there's no tension, how relaxed it is, how quick it is. Everything's the right hand. So he kind of started with the right hand positioning and all of that. For me, I started with nails. He would just file my nails. I know some kids start with like playing no nails. I've never played without any nails. So he would file my nails, making sure everything was right. So it was that. And then, like, slowly he would add the left hand so that I don't get completely bored. But it wasn't through music. He would just put my fingers where they needed to go, or he would show me on his guitar and I would just copy him. So I kind of learned to learn from hand to hand like that. And that continued for maybe 5 years or so. He taught me the notes. I knew he would quiz me what's the note on like the first line on the staff, right? Like it's an E, or what's the note with the third ledger line? It would be like another E. Oh, where would you put it on the guitar? Like, oh, a 12th fret for a string. Like I knew all of that. As a quiz, I knew that information, but I never looked at music and transferred that. The reason is when you are reading music, especially as a kid, you forget about your hands. You might be sitting there actually in a very tense position, holding something while you're figuring out what the next note is. Versus when you actually know what you're supposed to play, you might not be holding that chord for too long while you figure out what the next note is. So he didn't want me to not pay attention to my hands because I'm trying to figure out the sheet music. So once the physical memory of, like, the muscle memory of playing the guitar correctly, plucking the string correctly, all of that was already there where it wasn't going to be really messed up from my attention not being on it. That's when I remember, I guess I was like 11 maybe. He gave me this piece of music that I had already played. I just didn't know what I was reading. And he's just like, figure this out. And I started like, no, because I know where the notes go, because he was quizzing me about those. I would figure it out. And then a few measures in, I'm like, oh, it's that piece. Like, I know this piece. And then I just kind of continued. And then it would be like another piece that I already played. He just made me figure it out from the sheet music. And then eventually he gave me a piece of music that I have never played before. And if I remember correctly, the very first piece of music I learned that I've never, like, from sheet music, it was the Targa Allard Estudio Brillante. I think it's Allard, the composer, and like Targa maybe did the arrangements. That was the very first piece of music that I learned, not having known it, just read the notes and put it on the guitar. And I was probably 11 or 12 when I did that. And eventually you just read more and more and more, and you just become better at reading. But by that point, my hands were already, the technique was there. The cleanliness wasn't there. I wasn't playing clean. But my hand position was good. My striking was in the right direction. I wasn't like pulling strings away from the guitar. That took a while. It took, 3 to 5 years or so of constant monitoring. So I think that was the secret. And then the rest of it was convincing me to actually want to pick up a guitar. I think that was the biggest challenge.
That was the main takeaway I had from speaking with somebody that was working with Chinese students for a couple of years, is the main difference that he noticed from the European system and the American system was that there was a frequent element of like the teacher and the student revisiting their, I guess, main lesson throughout the week. So there were sort of there was sort of a lesson and then check-ins that would happen with a student. And these were students that were older already. Mm-hmm. So I think that sort of monitoring is extremely important. And for a child, I think that it has to be like that, right? I mean, there's no other way. You can't.
Well, yeah, because I don't know what I'm doing, right? So if I had a formal lesson with him, quote unquote, and then 5 days, 6 days passed until my next, Monday lesson, I could have been doing all sorts of things during those 6 days in between that teach my muscle memory the wrong information, because I'm a child. I don't know what I'm doing, if I'm playing correctly or not. I'm told to practice, so yeah, I'm playing those notes I've been told to play, but how am I playing those notes? And with muscle memory, your hands don't know what's right and wrong. You have to do the right thing over and over again, so the right connections get memorized into your muscle memory. So having the kid be yours and have access to them every single day, he was able to monitor everything I did. So I never did a wrong movement on the guitar. If I did, it was only once, and then he would correct me, right? So that's what gives the advantage. And in Armenia, if it was, not everyone's lucky to have a father or a mother that is going to teach them the instrument. For kids, they had lessons twice a week. And I don't know how it is in China, but perhaps maybe it's even more frequent. Because I think with children, you almost don't even need them to practice on their own. You just need to like collect little by little with supervision until they get a little bit old enough to remember what you taught them, so that they could replicate that as they get older.
Gohar, I always love having you on, and I feel like I've had you on the podcast multiple times because I learned so much just by speaking with you, also in private. But yeah, please come on again, and I know you got to run, so it's just awesome. Thank you so much for giving your time, and I know that everybody's going to listen and really enjoy. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. And if people are still interested and they want to listen, you know how to find me. I'll happily be back.